Fabulous. All right, we're gonna hide that. Fabulous. Good morning. Happy NPLEX studying. Woohoo! It's gonna be the most fun 2 weeks of your life. No, definitely not, but it's gonna be great. We're gonna get through it together. All right, should we get going? I think so. So I'm Dr. Petcho. I will be your tour guide through studying the NPLEX I the next 2 weeks. I apologize about my voice. I have been dealing with allergies for the past couple weeks and they just continue to hit me. I'm also teaching 2 different classes besides this one. So I'm talking a lot. So I'll do my best to keep my voice going for y'all. But I am gonna be mic'd just so I make sure y'all can hear me. And anytime if I start trailing off or fading away and you can't hear, just let me know, give me like a thumbs up or just yell out, hey, Dr. Petcho, we can't hear what you're saying. I know also with the masks too, the N95s, it can be difficult, but we're used to mask wearing now, right? It's like an old hand. No, I know it's tough. Okay, I am recording these sessions. I will post the videos in the afternoon every day, so don't say anything too crazy. It is gonna be recorded. And really, I'm just here to help support you in any way I can. I've taken this exam, I've passed it. I am a licensed ND, so I've been there in your seat. I really just want to provide as much clinical nuggets to you as possible to help get you through this. But know, I was saying this to someone earlier, that some parts of this exam are just going to be a surprise, and that's okay. And the first kind of presentation we get into is going to talk a little bit about how to handle this type of a test, because it's a test that is unlike any other that you've seen before. And so we will practice and get familiar with it. I have on the screen right now, if you can see, there we go, is our Moodle page. If you haven't gone on the Moodle page already, I encourage you to do so. This is where you can find our schedule and location for our sessions together for the next 2 weeks. I also am posting just some helpful review videos. These are very surface level crash course, but it's good to kind of get you familiar with what is the language of the anatomy and physiology of the sections that we're going to be covering in class. It will just help make sure that we all are on the same page, because I think a lot of it, that terminology piece can get lost in translation when you're studying so many different components at once. I also will have folders posted every day. These folders contain all of the lectures that we're going to be going through, or hopefully be going through in class in PDF form to make it easier to download. I can make the PowerPoints available to you, but it just takes up much more room on your computer. So I have it in PDF form for now, but feel free to, if you want the PowerPoints, I don't care. What else? Oh, also in here in this folder are some activity handout sheets. You do not need to download or print them. I do have blank pieces of paper if you're like me, a hand writer, a hand note writer, and some fun markers I'll bring every day. I'm a paper note taker. I know, old school, but it helps me like put things into my brain. I did a lot of mind mapping when I was studying. So we have some activities we'll complete in class together, but you also have the blank activities you can practice at home. And then scrolling down here, some other resources. Sorry, it's kind of awkward here. All right, other resources for y'all. So up in this section is your NPLEX study guide. If you haven't looked at the NPLEX study guide, I encourage you to do so. Gives you a breakdown of all the topics covered on the NPLEX exam, NPLEX I. Same will happen with NPLEX II. I also have posted my suggested study schedule. If this is your first day studying, good luck to you. You can still do it, but you're gonna have to really work as a full-time job. If you've been studying for the last few weeks, awesome. That's my recommendation, is study for about 4 to 5 weeks. That's ideal. You can do it if you study for less, but you just gotta be really, really dedicated and maybe not take weekends off, which that sounds awful. But I do have my suggested study schedule. We are not gonna cover every single thing on the NPLEX study guide in these sessions. We just can't. Nor do I want to keep you here every day for 8 hours. That sounds horrible in the summer. So we're gonna really hit the high notes for anatomy, physiology, pathology, biochem, and immunology. The only thing we're really not gonna touch on is a lot of embryology. That doesn't mean we don't have to. We absolutely can include some of those pieces if that's where you're struggling. A lot of embryology is some memorization and kind of remembering certain pathways. I will post some helpful lectures for you if you're struggling with reviewing that section. But I want to delve into the physio and path, immuno and biochem, and micro. Those are really the hard, some of the minutia where they get really detail oriented where they shouldn't probably need to be. I also have on here some other helpful studies places. Wild Brilliance has some flashcards that are great. I think this is Dr. Anderson's lectures, which also are fantastic. He's hilarious. So if you like to listen to videos, this is a great place to go. I had these on in the background when I was studying. I'd be like cooking dinner, throw a Dr. Anderson video on. Every once in a while, there'd be something where I was like, oh, that's a great mnemonic. Or, oh, that's a great memory, nugget. And I would write that down. A lot of times, though, there was some things where he'd be like munching on food, and I was like, okay, I can ignore those parts. So take those with a grain of salt, but they are really good review material. And I wanted to give you as many different types of review material as possible. So if you're a flashcarder, there's flashcards. If you're an audio learner, there's lots of video lectures. If you're visual, you have different PowerPoints and PDFs. So hopefully you'll have some options for everyone. And then this is your miscellaneous grab bag down here. I'm continuously putting stuff on here. These are from my colleagues, other physicians in the field, previous students like y'all who have passed these exams. There's Brainscape flashcards, there's Quizlet flashcards, there's old lectures from Dr. Chamberlain, the one and only, and Dr. Taylor's biochem review, Dr. Patterson's micro and immunology review. So if you're struggling in a certain area, there's probably going to be some study materials for you to look at here. Do not look at every single material, right? Material overload. This is really here for, I am struggling with biochemistry. Let me do a deep dive in Dr. Taylor's biochemistry section. Or biochemistry is easy. I was a biochem major. I have no idea what bacteria are. I'm going to look at Dr. Patterson's micro review. Okay, so that's what these are here for, is extra focused study if you're really not sure where to go. Okay, all right. And then last but not least, I don't know. This was just on here and I didn't remove it. So there you go. All right. We'll get into the nitty gritty now. Great. All righty. So how this course is going to work is it is 4 hours. It's 4 hours, 4 days a week. That's a long ass time to sit in a chair. So do not feel like you need to sit here the whole time. Please stand up, take bio breaks, go drink stuff, eat when you need to, just not in the classrooms, I think. I think that's still a rule here. But please take care of yourselves. You don't need to ask permission. You don't need to wait till an official break. I will try to do breaks every hour for 10-minute periods of time, just so that we all have time to stand and get out of this room if you would like to. That being said, there is a lot of material to cover, so I will just kind of go back to back to back otherwise, okay? But I will promise you a 10-minute break every hour that you can take. Sounds good? Okay. Please interrupt me and ask questions. If we need to power through to try to get through some lecture material, what I encourage you to do is on our Moodle page, I have a forum that's a Q&A forum. You can post questions on there anytime. I will collect those questions that are posted, and then the following day, the first half an hour, we'll do question answer. So whatever questions you had from the previous day, or if you're going home and studying some more cardio phys, and you're like, I have no idea what the cardiac cycle is. I know we talked about it, but I don't remember. We can review those the following morning, okay? So I encourage you to use that if there's an area that's a sticking point, or even if it's something we don't cover that you have a question about, please, I want this to be important to you, helpful to you. I don't need to relearn this stuff. You need to make sure you get it into your brain the best way you can for the test. So why am I here? Who am I? A lot of you I don't know. Some of you I do, but a lot of you I don't know. So I'm Dr. Emma Nyworth Petcho. You don't need to know my whole name. Dr. Petcho, Dr. P, Dr. Emma, Doc, whatever. I'll respond to all. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm a certified personal trainer. I graduated from NUNM. I did a 2-year residency here. My undergraduate experience is in biochemistry, general biology, and public health at PSU. I am now a faculty of biology at Warner Pacific, which is a local kind of liberal arts school in Portland. I teach all the pre-med students. So I'm teaching them biochem and A&P and genetics and micro and immuno using the same textbooks that we do in this school. So I am very familiar with this stuff. I teach it at a level that is, meant for undergrads all the way up to grads and everything in between. So I'm hopefully going to be able to help you break down some of these complex topics into more understandable nuggets. That's my goal. I'm also an owner of my own company. I am a practicing physician in Portland and Eugene, and I do tutor people for board review. So this is something I love doing. I like helping you pass these awful tests. I have to say, MCAT was the worst one I took. This one was a little bit better, and Boards 2 is the best. Boards 2 is super fun. So if you can get through this one, NPLEX 2, piece of cake, all right? I promise. I promise you. It's actually fun because you get to think about how would I treat someone as a doctor, which that's exciting. This part, you're like, embryology, when am I going to use this? Probably never, but you still have to get through it. It's one of those things like unless if you do, I don't know, unless if you really go into that area, you're probably not going to use some of this stuff. But that being said, I thought I'd never use it. Now I teach it. So who knows? All right. So overview, what are we going to do first? We're going to do, this is just going to be a little intro. This is the only time I'm going to do it, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. We're going to do a little bit of NPLEX I testing info, how to study for success, our course review course breakdown, and we'll do a little practice questions, okay? So first, NPLEX testing information. When is your exam? Really important to know. Tuesday, August 2nd at 7:45 a.m. I say 7:45 a.m. because the test starts at 8 and you really want to be there early. They will shut the doors at 8 o'clock and you will not be able to enter. With all the COVID stuff going on, the fact that you, I think, are getting temperature checked now, you have to go through more of a check-in procedure than previously. You could just kind of show up, show your ticket and be like, I'm a human. Now they do extra steps, right? You don't want to miss your test because you slept in or wanted to guesstimate Portland traffic. So I suggest arriving by 7:15, arriving, parking, getting checked in, then you can relax, right? You can meditate, you can power pose, whatever you need to do. I have the location here. It is downtown, good times. If you live far away, I lived out in the Gorge when I was a student here. I actually did get a hotel and I stayed the night in Portland for the course of my NPLEX 2 exam. So that's multiple days. NPLEX 1, I just drove in early, okay? NPLEX 2, though, I did stay locally. So night before, suggested night before on August 1st, review some flashcards, review some practice questions like a normal study day, high yield concept stuff that you kind of already know, boost your confidence a bit that night before. Stop at 5 if you can. Exercise if that's normal, eat a great dinner, complete your nighttime routine, go to sleep early. Aim for like that 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Really try to see if you can get a good night's sleep. I know it's hard. Take whatever you need to take. Pretty sure I was like loaded up on some adaptogens at this point. But that night before, morning of, wake up, complete your morning routine, eat protein-rich breakfast or your normal morning meal, whatever that is for you. Commute to the site by 7 a.m. Don't study the morning of. You're just going to stress yourself out. I know you won't listen to me. I definitely didn't, but try not to. Try to just wake up, arrive fresh brain, okay? Your exam schedule for the NPLEX 1. You're going to be checking in and getting seated from 7:45 to 8:15. 8:15 doors will close. 8:15 to 8:30, they give you instructions like essentially don't cheat, fill in the bubbles on your Scantron, yada, yada. And then section 1's from 8:30 to 11. Then you have an hour break and then you have an afternoon session, very much like the session in the morning. And then you're out of there by 3 o'clock at the latest. So what are my do's or don'ts for the day of? Do wake up early and complete your normal morning routine. Don't create a morning routine that's different just for today. If you don't have a normal morning routine, if you don't go work out in the morning, don't start on your NPLEX day. Make it just like every other day. Do eat a high protein breakfast. Don't skip breakfast unless if you normally skip breakfast, but I suggest eating something, getting something in your belly. Do leave and arrive by 7 a.m. Don't arrive just before or during admission. Check in time. You will be stressed. Your adrenals will be taxed more than they are. do bring or plan your lunch break time. Don't plan on just eating out. I know you're downtown and you can eat lots of different places. Just don't stress. If they don't have your food ready and you don't get to eat your meal, you're stressing to get back in time. Eat out after. We went out afterwards and I don't remember the rest. But it was a good time. Do leave your location during the break though. Don't just stay right by the testing area. At least like go outside for a second, get away from your friends. I know the thing that you're gonna wanna do is be like, what'd you put for answer, 4D or whatever. Don't do that. For one, it could disqualify you from the exam. For two, you're just gonna get stressed out. You're not gonna remember what answer you put. You're gonna start questioning yourself. Save that for once you're done with the whole test. Then meet up with your friends, drink your drink of choice, and then you can talk about your answers. I do suggest visiting the location at least the day before if you've never been there, just so you know where you're going, right? Even maybe a week before. Practice that routine. Wake up on Tuesday, the week before the test, drive there, arrive there, do what you would do the following week to kind of get that routine down. It'll make you feel better the morning of. Don't ruminate on it. I just don't do it. It's not worth it. Again, I repeat, don't communicate about exam items or answers. I know this is impossible, but just don't do it officially. And if you're going to do it later once the exam's done with your friends when you're at home by yourself. You could get dismissed from the exam. So just don't risk it. Not worth it. These are some new testing regulations. I just wanted to have them up here so you have all this information for you. They have this 20-page PDF document of all the rules. This is the gist. They are doing COVID temperature checks. They are requiring face masks that cover your nose and mouth. I believe that they say cloth masks are okay, but I would probably just do an N95 or surgical if possible. And they are trying to comply with social and physical distancing guidelines, which they always have done. They typically leave a chair between you and the person next to you. You'll have a registration ticket. You have to keep that with you at all times. That's your ticket in and out. And you'll leave all other personal belongings outside of the testing center. So you don't get to really have anything with you during the exam outside your registration ticket. And you won't have access to your phone or anything like that. These are the things they let you take in. So your ticket, a piece of government issued photo ID, a non-alcoholic beverage, I have to mention that, in a non-breakable container, face mask, gloves, if you would like gloves, you don't have to, reading glasses if needed. You can take in one pair of foam earplugs if noise is an issue for you, and a sweater or light jacket. The room gets cold, so I suggest taking in a sweater. And the proctor will ask you to show all items. It is a controlled testing environment. They'll provide you with any tissues, writing instruments, erasers, and your exam booklet. They also give you some extra paper. So if you're a note taker, I think they'll give you a sheet of paper that they'll make you hand back in. You can also write in your test booklet, which I encourage you to do. And some of the activities we do today will be things that you could actually put in your brain, memorize, and write out on your exam to help you remember certain key concepts, which is why I'm having us do them. So what does the test look like? The test has 2 sections, 100 exam questions each, so 200 total. There's 4 to 6 questions per case. All questions are multiple choice with 1 correct and 3 detractor answers. So there's 17 to 25 cases per exam. You have 2.5 hours to complete each section, which means about 1.5 minutes per question, although I suggest you take only about a minute per question if possible. So that's the speed, that's the pace we're gonna work towards. So 6 to 9 minutes per case, okay? We'll talk about how to go through these cases more efficiently. The cases are often going to have some detractor information to pull you off of what you need to find. How to pass. It's one exam that contains questions on multiple different areas. There's 2 main categories you have to pass. You have to pass biological structure and function and disease and dysfunction. Those are the 2 categories you have to pass. If you don't pass one of the categories, you fail the whole test. So you have to pass both. Biological structure and function has anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and genetics as a part of it. Disease and dysfunction contains micro, immuno, and pathology. Okay. So what does that look like? Your study guide, the NPLEX study guide, breaks down the content of the exam by percentages. So I have done some of the math for you, and the hours I put down on your suggested study guide are broken down based off of what is going to show up more frequently on your exam and what's going to show up less frequently on your exam. So cardiovascular and gastrointestinal is about 12% each. So almost a quarter of your exam is going to be on the cardiovascular system and the gut. All right. So thinking about that, okay, you really need to be comfortable with those two systems to have success. Then about 40%, so almost half the exam is on MSK, neuro, repro, and urinary, 10% each. 8% each goes to endocrine, immunologic, and pulmonary. So that's about another quarter of the exam. And then 6% each is integument and hematopoietic. So if you're going to cut a section, if you're on, clenched on time, skin and blood might be the two sections that you study the least, right? Or you don't study at all. I don't suggest doing that, but if you had to cut a section, those would be the two sections I would cut or diminish. Do not skimp though on like the cardio and gastro. Now break down on content by category. So these categories are equally distributed throughout the exam. So you're going to have an equal amount of questions on anatomy, on physiology, on biochemistry and genetics, they put those together. On micro and immuno, they put those together, and on pathology. So if the exam's 200 questions, you're going to have 120 questions, 40 questions each on the first three topics, and about 80 questions, 40 questions each on disease and dysfunction. So it's a little bit heavier on how is the body working when it's working right versus how the body is working when it's working wrong, right? Pathology. At NUNM, we do a really good job of learning pathology. So you're going to feel really prepared or more prepared for that section. It's not that we don't do good about how the body's working when it's working right. It's just there's a lot more information to learn there. So you're going to probably overall feel more confident in the pathology section, and that's okay, right? Micro and immuno, there are a lot more questions that are specific in this section. So we will try to spend a decent amount of time reviewing that in this class. There's no embryology on this, if you've noticed.
Yeah, now you're stressing me out.
That's what stresses you out? Sorry, anatomy?
It's been 3 weeks. Yeah, no, definitely not anywhere there.
Oh, I think I'm hearing someone from above. Those of you, hello, those of you on Zoom, I think I'm hearing you, so maybe mute yourselves, but I appreciate you being here. Like, it's the voice from above, thank you. All right. I don't think it was anyone else, right? I think it was Zoom, right? I'm not crazy, I'm not hearing voices. Okay, good. Whew. Like it's only Monday, this is bad. Okay, so there's no embryology, right? There's no embryology on this list. Embryology is included in anatomy, okay? So that's why I don't spend a ton of time reviewing embryology. It's important, you still need to know it, but if you're going to skimp on a ology, embryology could be the thing that you maybe review just more minimally. Not being said to completely skimp it. Some years there's been a lot of embryology on there that's just random stuff, but it's included in the anatomy section. If you're a numbers person, this is like okay, if I have to do cardio, I'm gonna have 4 questions on anatomy, 5 questions on physiology. If this stresses you out, that's fine. But if you're like, you need to see it numerically broken down, this is kind of what the test makers do when they're creating the exam. They're trying to pull, okay, how can we do 5 micro-ish immuno questions for the cardiovascular system? How can we do 5 path questions for cardiology? How can we do 4 biochem genetics questions for neurology? Okay, so this is what they do when they create the exam. So now the test strategies, the good stuff. How do I do well on this type of a test? These are my suggestions. This is also included from like other study guide people, past NPLEX, Wild Brilliance, previous other NDs who've passed the test. But we all encourage you, read the questions first. This is pretty standard for multiple choice, but you're gonna get a vignette. It's a long case. And then you're gonna get 4 to 6 multiple choice questions, sometimes 3. Read those questions first and attempt to answer without reading the multiple choice answers. So if you can just read the question, what's the enzyme that is involved in cholesterol formation, the main regulatory enzyme in cholesterol formation? HMG-CoA reductase. You don't even have to look at the answers. You just circle that one, right? 100%. So if you can read it and be like, oh, I know this one, circle it, move on, right? If you then need to, if you're like, I don't know, then read the multiple choice options. If you can then answer it without the case by looking at the multiple choice options, do so, right? If you can eliminate some answers you know are wrong, we're talking about cardiology and they mentioned like something totally in a different system, eliminate the answer. There's some pretty obvious detractors. They are not trying to be tricky. If they are obvious detractors, they are obvious detractors. Then circle back to the case to read through for any information that might be necessary. Sometimes you do have to read through the case, but oftentimes you don't. So don't waste your time. This will save you time, unnecessary reading, and unnecessary questioning yourself, right? If you know the answer, know the answer. Feel confident in that. A question I get often is to skip or not to skip. That's the question. Do I skip a question and come back to it? Or do I just choose an answer and hope for the best? It's a little bit of both. So the pros of skipping is you can come back to it later. You avoid wasting too much time on that question. You could learn more from answering other questions in the future, and you can recheck answers for certainty later on. The cons are, though, you have a very, very increased likelihood of messing up your Scantron. That's my biggest con. You may not have enough time to go back, and there is no harm in guessing, and you could always change the answer if the things in the pros column are true. So here's my suggestion. If you have no clue, do an educated guess, get it down to one answer, circle the question, fill in your Scantron bubble lightly. Don't fill it in with like your 100% confident bubble. Lightly shade that Scantron bubble. If you have time at the end of the exam, go back through and hit all your circled questions again, and then fill on your Scantron bubble confidently that time. You will be given erasers. You can erase if you decide you want to change the answer later. But most of the time, a lot of times, our first guess is going to be our best guess. That's what's been statistically proven. I've had 3 people I've known who have skipped a question and then messed up their Scantron and didn't have enough time to correct it before the end of the exam. And they failed just because they couldn't correct their Scantron in time. It's just not worth it. One question, no harm in guessing. You don't get minus points for getting answers wrong. So you might as well put down an answer, right? 25%, 50% is better than no percent as an option of getting it right. Scantron suggestions. Answer them all as you go through. I would suggest circling your answer on the test as well as bubbling in your Scantron. Questions you're unsure about, like I said, do a circle or a star or some type of marking that is to you says, I need to go back and review this. And then fill in that Scantron bubble lightly. At the end of the test, try to leave 10 to 15 minutes to review your answers for completeness and correctness. And double check your Scantron matches the answers you circled on the test and that your bubbles are filled out completely. Okay, obvious stuff, but when we get in a high stress testing scenario, all of these normal things that we remember from Scantron testing just goes out the window. So that's why I'm putting it down here for y'all. So pacing. I've talked a little bit about pacing. How fast should you go through an exam? How fast should you go through your test questions? My goal for you is to spend no more than a minute on each question. That seems easy now, but when you start guessing yourself and have to eliminate answers, that minute goes by really fast. If you're unsure after about a minute, mark the question, take an educated guess, and move on. Forget about it, right? You don't want to not have enough time at the end because you spent too long on that one question. If you do this, you'll be left with 50 minutes, 50 minutes, after all questions are answered to review your marked questions and check your Scantron for accuracy. Then you can ponder those 5 questions that you were struggling on for as long as you want, right? But move forward, complete the exam, then come back. It feels better having extra time at the end than being rushed to finish. Guessing, this is different than some standardized tests. There's no penalty for wrong answers, so it's always better to guess than to not. No test question should be left unanswered. If you don't know the answer, eliminate incorrect choices and then guess amongst your remaining options. You can eliminate one, you've then cut out 25%. You're a third. You have like what, 33% chance? If you eliminate two, it's a 50-50 chance. That's pretty great. It's pretty good odds. Changing answers. This is another common thing that people are like, should I change my answer? So conventional wisdom says to not second guess your answer. However, there are some of you that will be better second guessers than others. So we're going to do some practice tests, some practice exams in this class, and then we're going to review answers together as a group and talk about why the answer was the best answer. Tomorrow is going to be our first practice exam day, right at the beginning, 8 a.m. It'll be great, just like your test day, right? We're going to come in, we're going to get ready, we're going to start with an exam, just like you will Tuesday, August 2nd. Okay? So then you'll recognize if you stuck with your first guess and you got all your first guesses right, or the majority of them, you know you're a good first guesser. If you change some of your answers and went with your second guess and those were all right, you know you're a better second guesser. So learn what is your best test taking strategy when it comes to changing answers. I bet you some of you will be better first guessers, some of you will be better second, third, fourth guessers, right? And that's totally fine. So we will practice that in this class. So our vignettes. This is just wonderful. They typically describe the disease or disorder they're talking about in their most classic, stereotypical, awful presentation. There will probably be some offensive things written on this exam. There's some offensive things in naturopathic medicine, right? We've seen that. So just be prepared. There might be some trigger questions that are there with how the vignette is worded. I know that it occurred back in my day. I'm sure it still has not been eliminated completely. So I just want to provide you some warning. I will try to avoid that in the vignettes I provide you, but just I want you to be aware. We see this especially when in exam 2, NPLEX II, when it comes to homeopathy. There's some really not so great stereotypes that are created there. But when you're taking these tests and you're looking at this vignette, you want to look for specific cardinal signs, pathognomonic signs, specific things in the narrative history. The data for the labs and exams that might be given might help you answer or rule out answer choices. And sometimes there'll be a dead giveaway for diagnosis. They'll be like, an A1C of 9%, and this patient has diabetes. And they'll tell you the diagnosis at the end of your vignette. You're like, I had the diagnosis. They're like, oh, nope, we're not asking about the diagnosis. So making a diagnosis from the history and data is often not the final answer. This was the most frustrating thing for me in NPLEX I, was I'd read this vignette and I'd be like, oh, I got this. I know what disease it is. And at the end they say, this patient's diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I'm like, great. That was the only thing I knew, okay? So why I'm saying this now is that's why you read the questions first, right? You're like, oh, I'm not looking for the diagnosis. I'm looking for what biomarker would be elevated in a patient with MS. Or I'm looking for, they're saying that they're having numbness or tingling in this certain dermatome. What sacral nerve root is going to be affiliated with that specific dermatome? So that's why you read the questions first, read your multiple choice questions next, or multiple choice answers next, then read your vignette. Then you're not diagnosing every single one only to find that they gave you the diagnosis. Read first, then peruse for clues. Okay? We will practice. We will practice. So how to study. You're here. That's a big step. I hope you've been doing some studying before being here. If not, it's fine, but I'm hoping you have. At least reading through some stuff, preparing your study materials. So here's some study strategies. These are pretty universal when it comes to USMLE, which is your MDDO counterparts in their board exams, as well as you guys, as well as MCAT, as well as NCLEX nursing. High yield, practice testing, distributed practice, things like flashcards, things where you don't have the answer right in front of you and you have to recall it from your brain. That's going to be your best high yield study. I suggest doing this more and more as you get closer to the end, right? We're going to do more review, we're going to do more discussion, more activities, more reading to start with. Then as you move closer towards the end, you're going to start doing more practice tests, more practice questions, more flashcards, more things that you don't have the info right at your grasp. Your moderate yield, again, mnemonics. We'll talk a lot about those. Elaborative interrogation or self-explanation. That sounds stressful. That's just discussing amongst your peers. We'll do some of that here too. Not as much today. I'll start you light. We'll get into more discussion later. And concept mapping, mind mapping, drawing things out, creating diagrams. And then your lowest yield is rereading, highlighting, and underlining, and summation or summarization. I know for me, any of my textbooks that I have, I literally have like every line highlighted. That's not helpful study. So I encourage you, if you need to highlight or underline, do it, but know that it's going to be the lowest yield of study that you have. Okay. This is just, I'm not going to read through these, but this is just a list of study resources that I think has been helpful and that some of my counterparts have used in the past. There's some links on here. Most of these, though, you can just Google and get the link there. If you want me to include the links, I'm happy to. I'd say probably by far the best text resource I had was First Aid, just because it gives you a lot of high yield concepts. It's very short information. Well, Brilliance is great too. Board Vitals question bank is good. And then if you're into videos, Sketchy Micro is great. Osmosis, Khan Academy, study.com. We'll do some crash course too. Lots of good video resources out there. Study suggestions and schedule. I've already posted this, but we're going to talk a little bit about it. Study like it's your full-time job. I worked through med school, so I understand if you have an actual full-time job or another job or a family or other responsibilities, I get it. But I highly encourage you to try to hit 40 hours of study a week. Okay, whatever that looks like for you. Some people do like an 8 hours per day, 5 days per week. Some people will maybe do 6 hours a day and work through the weekends, whatever makes the most sense. Take at least a day off a week or maybe a half a day to avoid brain fatigue. You know, I encourage you to get out, go outside, take some time away from studying. It'll help your brain recover. And aim for at least 1 month of studying if you can. Take as many practice tests or simulated exams as possible. Even retaking an exam that you've already seen before can provide you with helpful information. Are you retaining knowledge? Are you actually able to look at a question you've seen before and answer it correctly the second time around? This can also build confidence. That's half the battle. Use and make flashcards as review or study pages. Things that you can do quick memorization and repetition, either paper or digital. My goal for you all is to get through the material first pass within 3 weeks, if you're studying only for 4 weeks, and use your last week to review. So no new material the last week. I realize sometimes that's impossible, and that's fine. But if you can, do a first pass through over the course of 3 to 4 weeks, and your last week before the exam, you're just reviewing concepts you've already seen before. So this is the ideal week 1 study schedule. We've passed this week. This would be your week 2. This is what we're going to start today. So this technically is our week 2 study schedule. So we're going to be going through test taking 101. That's what we're talking about today. We're introducing some cardiophysiology, cardiopathology, and pulmonary physiology. Then your self-study PM session, you're going to review some other cardiophysiology and pathology and some pulmonary physiology and pathology on your own. Then we start the next day. So you have a schedule of kind of what we're going to talk about for the next few days and what you should ideally be doing on your own time. Do not feel like you have to follow this schedule, obviously, but this is what I've seen works from previous students in the past. Kind of a summation of a bunch of different study schedules, including my own. Week 3, we get a little bit more into immunology, biochemistry, micro. And then week 4, lots of review, high yield review, flashcards, practice exams, practice questions, no new material ideally. Last week, this is Tuesday, NPLEX Day. So Sunday, Monday, just flashcards and final prep. Okay, if you can take a day off before, awesome. If not, it's okay. So before we get into our first break, I want to just talk about what we're going to do here. So our review course breakdown, obviously we are together for 16 hours for this week and 16 hours next week. So that's 32 hours together. Whew, I'm sorry. Most of my classes don't have to spend that much concentrated time with me in 2 weeks, but we'll make it through. With this review course, we're gonna have every topic except for this first one is 15 to 20 minutes. That's why there's so many PowerPoints, so many presentations, they're short, okay? So 15 to 20-minute topics, enough time to really focus your brain in, give it 100%, and then take a brain break, even if it's just for a minute. I will record the lectures so you can review them on your own. So I will try to keep remembering to do that. If you could remind me at the beginning of the day to record, that would be great. I will give you suggested topics to study on your own time. We're not going to do note cards just to save paper and trees, but I have that forum on the Moodle page to post your questions. Please do, and then we will review them the next day. We'll do practice questions and passages. They're dispersed throughout. We're going to do 2 practice test simulations administered, one tomorrow, the next the following Tuesday. So you're getting a theme here, right? Every Tuesday, we're doing a practice test until your actual exam. You wake up Tuesday, you're used to taking a test because you've been doing it for the last few weeks, right? You'll do one tomorrow. It'll just be an hour. It's not going to be the full meal deal. You'll do one the following Tuesday. It'll just be an hour. And I'm going to give you a practice test to do the following Tuesday when we're not together. That will be a bigger one. And by the time you're at August 2nd, you're like, oh yeah, that's what I do on Tuesdays. I take a test. It's easy. I encourage you to practice self-care during this time. Stand at least once per hour and stretch. Please don't sit the whole time. Bring food, water, drinks of choice to support your natural study environment. I know you're not able to eat in here, so that's why I'm recording things. If you need to go eat a snack, breakfast, whatever, go do it in the designated places. I don't know where they are, but go eat there. If you need to drink things though, please feel free. Drink coffee, drink water, drink tea. Just take your mask off, drink the drink, put your mask back on. People are conscientious or don't want you by them if you're drinking. We have plenty of room to social distance. Please stay hydrated. Come engaged and ready to participate. Like I said, I'm going to bring you in easy today. We're going to have some mild participation, and it'll get more and more as you get comfortable with me. Practice your activities and review information at home. Write down or ask questions for review, and make this helpful for how best you learn. If you don't learn the best in this environment, that's fine. I attended some of my study sessions in person. Some days I didn't. I was like, I don't want to review this. I'm good. I know gastro. That's not true. I came for the gastro days. But I was like, I felt really good on some days. I was like, I don't need to come in. I'm a biochem major. I got this. So come in when you want. Don't feel like I'm going to be offended if no one's here. I will still talk to myself. I do it all the time. It's true. Those of you who have precepted with me, I talk to myself all the time. Okay. Don't stay glued to your chair. It's boring. You'll fall asleep. Don't only passively listen without taking notes or creating your own flashcards or doing whatever you need to do. If this is a topic that bores you, go review flashcards on your own while you're here. I don't care. Use this course as your only study time. Don't do that. Please study elsewhere outside of this time. And don't avoid studying at home after. I know you're not going to want to go home and study some more. But I encourage you to take like lunch off. That's why it ends at 12. Go eat some food, get outside, and then get back and do some focused studying in the afternoon to try to really integrate the stuff we learned into your brain. That will help. Don't not double negative, super. Don't not ask questions. Please ask questions. If you're scared to ask them, or if we don't have time to get to them during class, I will answer them the next day. So never feel afraid to ask questions. If I don't have the answer, I'll get it to you. And don't think this is the only way to learn. Remember, the knowledge is in your brain. You've already learned it. You just have to find ways to access it and wield it on test day. You already know all of this stuff. This is all review in some way, shape, or form. We just have to remember how to find it in our brain, right? Have to access those nerve pathways. Smell some rosemary. Helps with memory. Okay, let's do some practice questions, shall we? That'll be super fun. Okay, so what I'm going to have you do is if you have paper, great. If you don't, I suggest that you come get some paper. Just one, you just need one sheet. You can take more. And what you're going to do on your one sheet of paper is you're going to write an A, B, C, or D. A, B, C, D. Then you can either rip it or fold it or whatever. I ripped mine in two, and I folded it in half. And this is how you can do, we're going to do our check-ins on how we're doing or what we know, because all these are multiple choice, right? All these practice questions. So you're going to hold up an A if you think it's A, a B if you think it's B, a C if you think it's C, or a D if you think it's D. Ooh, I'm sorry. Okay, feedback from above. And then also, you can have the comfort knowing no one knows how you answered, right? You can hold it up, and only I will see, and I don't judge. Write your A, B, C, and D. That's all we need. There you go. Oh, there's markers, there's pens, there's pencils. I'll bring more. All right, while you're finishing writing your ABC, it doesn't need to be perfect. I have one student in one of my classes, she always makes the most beautiful A, B, C, and D ever. Like, it doesn't need to be that gorgeous, but I appreciate it. All right, our first question, I'm going to start with how I would read this on a test. Overproduction of which hormone is the most likely cause of galactorrhea? Is it A, prolactin, B, growth hormone, C, antidiuretic hormone, D, follicular-stimulating hormone? And our vignette is a 32-year-old female presents with galactorrhea and frequent headaches. She has a year-long history of amenorrhea. Physical exam reveals bitemporal hemaniopsia. Radiologic studies confirm the presence of a pituitary adenoma. See, they gave you the diagnosis. Lame. What answer do we think it is? A, B, C, or D? We got some A's. We got a lot of A's. I love it. We are correct. A is the correct answer. And why? Why is it A? All right, let's see. So galactorrhea often results from having too much prolactin. The hormone responsible for milk production when you have a baby. Prolactin is produced by your pituitary gland, small little bean-shaped gland at the base of your brain. Secretes and regulates several different hormones. Did we need to read the case vignette for this question? No. Did we even need some of the multiple choice answers for this question? Probably not, right? Okay, that's an example. This is taken directly from NPLEX. Every person that put up an answer got it right. All right, next one. Her bitemporal hemaniopsia, there we go, is explained by the compression of the optic chiasm, the left optic nerve, the right optic nerve, the left and right optic tract. This one might be a little trickier. You have to know what bitemporal hemaniopsia is. You have to know what it could be compressing. Got some A's, got some D's, we got some other answers. I love it. Good, good, good. All right, let's see where we are. Those of you who said the optic chiasm, that's the correct answer. Let's see why. Oh, so some background information that you need to know. Bitemporal hemaniopsia is the medical description of a type of partial blindness where vision is missing in the outer half of both the right and left visual field. Okay, so that's what this term means. Bitemporal hemaniopsia is almost always caused by damage to the optic chiasm and can occur from the direct or indirect effects of a variety of lesions, including tumors like her pituitary adenoma. Okay, so we had to know a little bit of information. You didn't really necessarily have to know what bitemporal hemaniopsia meant, but you did need to know that it's going to be some type of compression, and you had to figure out what structure it was compressing. Optic chiasm, damage to optic chiasm, is the structure that's being affected here. And it makes sense, pituitary adenoma, pituitary is pushing down, that optic chiasm is right there underneath where that pituitary is. It's one of the things we watch for in a pituitary adenoma. I have a patient who has one, and it's small enough, it's a microadenoma, so it doesn't need to be no operation, she's not having vision issues. But if it gets larger, and it was affecting vision or affecting these issues, we might have to surgically remove it or do some other type of treatment. So this would be an anatomy question. All right, let's try another. The pituitary gland is located anterior to the lesser wings of the sphenoid, within the petrous portion of the temporal bone, superior to the cribriform plate in the crista galli, in the sella turcica, inferior to the diaphragm sella. Oof, okay, we're remembering anatomy, remembering that day where we had to look at the brain and the skull and all the different lesions, all the things. D's, we got lots of D's. And we are correct. You guys are, see, you're superstars. You're already good. You don't need me. Okay, but why? Let's look at a picture. So we see here in that sella turcica, inferior to the diaphragm. So here we got our little picture. We're zooming in. Here's our pituitary, our posterior, our anterior, our hypothalamus is up here. Sella turcica right here. Sphenoid sinus right below. If you don't know, now you know, right? Look at that picture of the brain. Study those structures. They love asking questions about where things fit in certain depressions or cavernous structures in different bones of the face and the skull. So really knowing those different holes, those different structures will be helpful for you when it comes to studying anatomy and phys. All those foramen and foramina, they come back to haunt you. All right, an embryology question. Ooh, exciting. What is the embryological origin of the cells in her tumor? Is it the diencephalon, the oral ectoderm, neural crest cells, or the rostral neural tube? If you haven't studied any embryo, you might not know. That's okay. Take your best educated guess. Get rid of some answers. See a couple different ones. Good. I see a mixture of all four. I love that. That means that we're all equally not sure. It is B. I think I saw some B's out there. Oral ectoderm. So why? What is this? Okay, so let's talk a little bit of embryology. Now I'm going to post some embryology review stuff for you tonight, which will hopefully kind of help remind you of these pathways. So neural crest cells, NCC, are induced during embryonic development at the border between the neural ectoderm and the non-neural ectoderm, which gives rise to the central nervous system and the epidermis. So pituitary gland, part of the brain, central nervous system, neural ectoderm, non-neural ectoderm. Pituitary gland, though, has a dual embryonic origin. Anterior and immediate lobes derive from the oral ectoderm, while the posterior lobe comes from the neural ectoderm. So we had here oral ectoderm, we had no neural ectoderm. So your only option that was correct is the oral ectoderm, okay? Even though technically the pituitary gland comes from both oral ectoderm and neural ectoderm, okay? Part of these processes of embryologic development are processes of elimination, okay? Recognizing, okay, what's in the central nervous system, where does that come from? Which ones can I eliminate then? Right? Okay, we'll get out of endocrinology and we'll move into a different one. One more, and then we'll take a break. So which of the following underlying conditions most likely led to her death? Okay, well, we have no idea. So this will be a question where we probably have to look at the vignette, right? Because, well, whose death? How did they die? I don't understand. So then our vignette. Post-mortem microscopic examination of the proximal end of the left anterior descending coronary artery, heart, from a 41-year-old female reveals a thrombotic occlusion arising from an atherosclerotic plaque. So how did she die? What condition could have had some risk factors that led to this thrombotic occlusion arising from an atherosclerotic plaque? Good. We're looking for a risk factor. Seeing a good mixture of C's and D's, which is great. A few A's and B's. Our answer we're looking for is D, type 2 diabetes. Why? We're specifically looking for, this is where the wording kind of gets particular. We're looking for which of the following underlying conditions most likely led to her death. While yes, calcific aortic stenosis would be an appropriate response because that could lead to her dying, we're not really concerned about the calcification of the aorta or the aortic stenosis, the actual aorta itself being stenosed and having a hard time opening. We're looking for what could cause atherosclerotic plaques, what could lead to atherosclerosis or increase our risk for atherosclerosis. Type 2 diabetes is by far the most likely to lead to an atherosclerotic plaque of the things in that list, right? Type 2 diabetes could absolutely contribute to some of those other conditions. Prolonged exposure to that hyperglycemia, that sugar, high levels of sugar, is a major risk factor in the pathogenesis of atherosclerosis in diabetes. We think about anything, any of those areas where that sugar, that sticky sugar in your blood can get stuck and create those plaques. So our eyes, our kidneys, our heart, our peripheral extremities, all those areas, it can cause problems. All right, hypercholesterolemia was implicated in the pathogenesis of her atherosclerosis. In the synthesis of cholesterol, what is the key regulatory or regulating enzyme? We talked about it already. All B's around, that's why I see, yes, correct, HMG-CoA reductase. If I'm a betting person, this will be on there in some way, shape, or form. We like talking about it. It's like we really know it. Anyways, this is the pathway if you need some reminding of how we get there. But HMG-CoA reductase, if you have to remember one enzyme, this is one I'd remember just because it comes up so often because we like talking about cholesterol. Cholesterol biosynthesis. This is a biochemistry question. So you all know biochemistry. All right, what is the source of the left anterior descending coronary artery? Oof, vascular anatomy, yikes. The aortic sinus, the circumflex, the left coronary, the right coronary. So the source of the left anterior descending coronary artery. Again, something that you don't even need to look at the vignette for. I got some C's, I got a lot of C's, I got a B's, C's and B's. Answer is C, you're right, so they weren't trying to trick you. The left, so here, let's look at it. So we have the left, do I have a pointer? I think I do. Laser, can you see my laser pointer? No, yes, yes, aha. All right, so we talked about left anterior descending coronary artery. So let's left anterior descending coronary artery, where is that? Okay, right here. Comes from our left coronary artery here. They weren't trying to trick you. Right coronary artery gives you the posterior and the right marginal over here. So our right coronary artery, the posterior and the right marginal, because the right coronary artery goes all the way around the back, then becomes this posterior. The left coronary artery comes over here, becomes the left circumflex artery, or just the circumflex artery. The left anterior descending, or the LAD, and then it comes into some marginal stuff. They weren't trying to be tricky. That's the type of questions we'll be working through, okay? I would say overall, based on our percentages, you're in the passing rate, right? You just have to pass. This isn't A, B, C, or D. You just got to pass. You got to get the majority of them right. They're going to throw out some questions too. So recognize that if everyone gets it wrong, they're probably going to throw out the question. Okay, not that you can all plan for that. No, if most of you don't know, it's probably going to get thrown out. All right, let's take a break. 5-10-minute break. We'll come back at 9:08 and we'll get into the goods. Cardiophysiology.